Hello and welcome to the Under the Heat Lamp podcast. Today we're going to be talking about psychics and mediums. With me today are my esteemed ghostly guests, Don.
Is there anybody? I actually fucked that up. I was gonna say, is anybody there? Like they do.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
fuck it, good.
David. And George.
Hey.
And now we've all heard that classic ghost line. Anybody?
Well, we're not gonna restart, so we'll keep it going.
We're not restarting.
keep it
for
rolling,
that.
keep it rolling.
That's going
We'll
in the
keep it.
final
We'll
bit.
keep it.
So yeah, as I said, today we're talking about psychics and mediums. I think we're gonna try and focus a bit on the online side of it, but the conversation might stray into the offline world. So does anyone want to
Not just the offline world, Kalen.
Oh,
The other world.
the other side world. So does anyone want to start off by giving us a little intro into the topic?
Yeah, sure. I mean, everyone kind of knows what psychics and mediums are, but I think what we're going to talk about is more of the online aspects. So people who live stream different fortune telling events and tarot card reading and medium and psychic like online presence. So yeah, more about that side of things and like the kind of cold reading in a room that you'd probably be familiar with.
Yeah, it's notably different than what we've come to know as typical, tarot readings and things like that happening in person, because now it's just one person sitting in a room by themselves speaking online to others. So it's kind of interesting to see that dynamic change, like how they do their work, basically.
Yeah, the idea of the modern paranormal is I don't know, quite enticing one, I find. It's that idea that it's moving something that's to be very spiritual and like mystical into a very like digital technological spaces.
Yeah,
There's something interesting there for sure.
And this is a good episode for that, I think, because we talked about Wiccans before, and there wasn't like a big distinction between the offline and online world. I don't think Wiccans were talking online, but there was nothing really like characteristic about the way they did that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for this, we're going to be talking about Twitch psychics and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming everyone's familiar with Twitch, but basically it's an online streaming platform, normally for games. But I think we've all watched some Twitch streamers doing tarot card readings and stuff like that. So in this case, kind of, the fact it's online is a big difference. So does anyone have any experience with psychics? Has anyone ever had a reading?
Don, I think that was a very obvious segue to you.
I don't know. David, you might have had a reading.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, we did actually.
Yeah, we discussed this, but I think we cut it from the.
Going a bit behind the scenes, we actually were kind of talking about this loosely as part of the Wiccan episode, but we ended up cutting it. So to go over it again for all the listeners, I did have a tarot card reading once upon a time about 8 years ago or something. My friend asked someone who was streaming in the days before Twitch, I think, to do it for me.
TV.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, no, Twitch was about then. I don't quite remember what it was, but it
definitely wasn't Twitch.
Yeah, it was just on some random streaming site because there was a fair few of them back then. I don't remember what was said, but yeah, that's my only experience in like any of this. I've never had like a palm reading or anything like that.
Do you remember how you felt afterwards? Do you remember?
Well, it was kind of a joke, to be honest. So, admittedly,
I think we were all pretty pissed.
yeah, I didn't really think anything of it. Then, ha 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 ha. That's quite funny. But
So it didn't hit. You didn't find any of it relatable.
No, I mean, I'm sure this will be something that we touch on a lot with, with the tarot readings and kind of telling fortunes and things like that. Is that it's a lot of very loose, broad statements which can apply to anything. And in that regard, yeah, sure, there probably was some things that they said which I could have applied to something that was going on in my life at the time, but nothing that was so specific where it was like, oh my god, she actually, figured me out, so to speak,
Didn't drop a name of an ex or anything like that?
No. There was nothing, again, like,
No
specific
specifics.
to me. Yeah, it was just like, you're going through trouble in your life, and it's like, well, every day, right? Probably. So
Yeah. What a surprise! There was no specifics.
Yeah.
We'll get
I
into
mean,
that
that
bit.
is. Yeah, we will get into that because that's the big thing, right? Is that it's not real.
I just want, I just wanted to ask. We'll get the elephant out of the room quickly. Is like, does anyone believe in the paranormal in the way that, that there might be psychics or mediums or anything like that? Because I think we've all discussed how we find it interesting and like there's little parts of it here and there that you can like latch onto. I spoke last time about the tarot cards, how I like that they're a way to create a narrative and tell a story through the placement of these cards, and that's got like an interest to me from like a narrative point of view. But as a the idea of it being clairvoyant is not particularly something that I subscribe to. But yeah,
absolutely not.
Do you guys
I don't
believe in
any of it.
ghosts, spirits, nothing like that?
No, not at all. Don?
No, I would say not. I appreciate what they're trying to do in a sense where I think it comes from a place of trying to comfort the other person. But when it's taken so literally and when they're actually trying to convince you that they have spoken to someone on the other side or that they've had some kind of reading which is telling you exactly what to do, I don't really buy it. So I think the thought's there, but I think when some people get too indulgent in it is when it starts to become a bit of an issue that I just can't get behind whatsoever.
Yeah, so when it seems the least legitimate is when they actually try and be specific.
Yeah, for sure.
Because when you're like, oh, your grandma's thinking of you and is proud of you, it's like, okay, that's probably true. But when they start going on about, like, I don't know, do you remember that one where she's like, he's like, I saw it on a TV show, he's like, yeah, your dad died in a drowning. And then it turns out he died in 9/11, which is like almost the opposite of a drowning. So
wait, how is that the opposite of a drowning? Because it's really high.
It's like a fire, and like it's in a building. Like, there's no way anyone died in 9/11 of drowning. You know what I mean? So yeah.
You have to bring up 9/11, Ken. Every time we hang out.
I'm sorry.
There's three little numbers always crop up.
It's really close to my heart, and anyway,
the point is that I wanted to ask that because I wanted to like try and get at the heart of what the like online community it kind of was, because I was wondering how many people you think actually believe in sort of that paranormal aspect, and that's why they are drawn to these people, or if they're like myself and Don are big fans of the legendary Derek Acorah and
the late great
rest in peace.
Wait, he's dead?
Yeah.
Fucking hell, we need to get a psychic to speak to him.
Yeah, right.
Then we definitely
get the mediums to talk to Derek Acorah.
Yeah.
But like
a chain of mediums.
It's because there's something interesting about it, and even though you don't believe it, I would say like this is one of those communities that has a possibility of like drawing in people who don't actually believe in it, if that makes sense.
Why do you say that?
Because there's a massive entertainment value to it. Like a lot of people who don't like Derek Acorah will say like, obviously he's a fraud, but he's very entertaining. And
we were watching clips of Most Haunted, which was a UK TV show where they went to haunted locations and stayed there overnight, basically.
It's
glorious.
It's the UK equivalent of like Ghost Hunters, if people have watched that in the States. But
Wasn't that like a back behind the scenes video they caught of Derek Acorah being like saying something that kind of suggested that he didn't believe any of it?
Really?
Yeah, well, at least that they were like fake. You know when they're in the house in like Ghost Hunted shows, like, and there's like a bang or whatever. And,
it's all fake because it's like it's lots of like handycam night vision footage that's about like 2 centimeters from everyone's face. Like there's no cameras set up in the house properly to like capture things. It's always like a notebook or like something like a lamp falling and it's just been pushed over. And then
Derek's just banging on a wall behind him somewhere.
And then when he gets possessed in the biggest air quotes of all time, it's just it's spectacular.
When he gets possessed, it is incredible.
In those clips where like he basically acts and pretends to be someone else. So there's a point where he's talking to the host and he's been I don't know, like I guess possessed by like some womanizer or something, and he's like, I can see your breasts, and he's talking this ridiculous, like with his eyes closed, kind of like shaking and stuff.
It's spectacular,
That is hilarious.
Does he ever channel like the people that the hosts know? Is it ever like
Oh my god!
I'm your
I'm
son.
your little girl. Like, hello, I'm your little girl.
No,
I miss you, Daddy.
I think it's like they go to a location where it's like the I don't know, the Blackpool Ripper lived here back in the day, right? And
But there's
then,
just
you
enough
know,
information that they already know about the possibility of like who it could be haunted by, that they can kind of just riff off the other stuff. And it's usually just like it'll be Derek Akora, the the medium / psychic, and there'll be just like a normal TV host, and then a kind of crackpot historian who'll give the history of how and why this place is possibly haunted. And it's so good because everything has this like paranormal spooky air to it, which is something else I wanted to talk about in regards to the other stuff. But it just has this like, like weird fade outs where the host will just be speaking and then she'll fade away like a ghost before it cuts to like an advert. And it's just all this whole aura, and there's like, it's pure entertainment in my eyes. It reminds me of like WWE, where it's all fake, but there's like a weird artistry to it, and there's a huge entertainment value in it.
but
Even though
also,
there's no,
like,
there's nothing real in that stuff.
But also, like WWE, there are people who think it's real.
True.
That's almost where, like, the thing is, right? If it was real, the news would be freaking out. Like, everything in the world would stop because we've just found like an actual connection to like the other side, right?
Yeah,
It's
if there
not
was like
like-
some concrete evidence to prove that there was a spirit or a poltergeist had just gone buck wild in someone's house, that would be
It's not like
crazy.
Living TV have the rights to the first ever ghost sighting, But people seem to think that they have a lot of them, and they're just showing them on TV willy nilly. I mean, the show's not on anymore, unfortunately.
Well, that's
But,
what we were
yeah.
talking about before researching, and kind of the link is that a lot of that stuff is now moving into the online space, and there are old episodes of Most Haunted on YouTube, and there are a few people doing their own sort of investigations in abandoned houses, or like filming their haunted spots. I wondered if you guys had come across any of that and what you thought about it.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's like really big distinctions because there's loads of like just old content of haunted houses and paranormal activity and psychics and mediums on YouTube. They get like loads of views, and I think because of that, loads of people have just been more inclined to search into this stuff, or to search for more content like that. So since then, there's been loads of other mediums and psychics who do, like, they'll show their own house and be like, oh yeah, I heard that there was a lumberjack that used to live here, and every other day I kept finding like a little piece of wood under my bed or something. And it's so interesting to see the difference between this like homegrown YouTuber content that has to be made like every week and is constantly being updated and uploaded, compared to like the really old stuff where it'd be like, you'd make a YouTube video, you'd make a video like on one house and then that was it. So like you can follow like really long form stories about how people have been haunted for like years, and what do you guys think about that?
I was going to say, like, I was just going to draw like the kind of line between like psychics and mediums in a way, because I don't think there's any harm in someone going and like getting creeped out by themselves and like looking at a haunted house, but I'm not sure about the ethics of some of the other the other activities psychics and mediums get into. But that might be a little bit ahead of myself in our topic of discussion.
No, I mean,
what about the
move on to
dynamic?
that.
Yeah, well, what about the dynamic of like the homegrown aspect of it? The fact that it is just like kind of one dude and a camera now, in a lot of these cases, compared to the whole TV crew as before.
Yeah, I think it's a lot
It's just as stupid.
It's a lot of people like trying to start like it's almost like starting a business or trying to make something of themselves in terms of, their business just happens to be in like psychic and spiritual stuff. And it's kind of, it's weird. It's like a fine line where I think like most of us think like this is that, and like obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but when it's a bit of harmless fun and like not a real amount of money is exchanged, it's kind of fine. Or if you want to pay to go on a ghost hunting walk, it might be pretty fun. Or like, I don't know, I've done a ghost walk before, and it was just like a bit of history, and like a bit of like theater as like someone like runs around, and it's spooky, and it gives you like, you know, a nice bit of entertainment. But when it's someone proclaiming to be talking to like dead relatives, or, you know, giving you life advice based on this, you know, based on the spiritual world. I nearly said stars then, but it's, I don't know, if it doesn't sit quite as well, because I think like this is the one thing I wanted to ask like you, Kalen, as well as the others. But like we got put onto like this psychic on Twitter and Twitch called Aphrodite. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Like how much? Like seems like a relatively, you know, an all right kind of guy, but how much do you think it is like a con? Like to be, you know, to get down to brass tacks.
That's a difficult one, and I think that, you know, listeners will find that we are a bit harsher on the psychics and mediums than we were on the Wiccans. I think because of that financial aspect. You know, Wiccans are basically like a religious belief, right? But whereas these psychics, like Aphrodite, whatever his name is, are out there and they're making a lot of money. And I mean, with tarot, I actually think he's sincere, because you're literally just busting out some
No,
cards.
but I was going to
and
ask
you'll
you
have
that,
it.
right? Because we watched like, for the listeners, we watched the Madeleine McCann video that he posted, where he is doing a tarot reading of Madeleine McCann, and it's very, you know, suggestive of what he thinks may have happened to her through the tarot cards, which I don't want to repeat. But I didn't notice him. You don't see him like draw the cards. You kind of see him shuffling them. And like, I don't know if there's like multiple layers of whether this is like genuine or not, or whether like the cards have been set up in a certain way, which I don't think so, but the possibility is definitely
cards are
there.
up for interpretation. Like a card.
No, but I mean, as in
will-
like the ones he's drawing, because you don't see
you think-
particularly, you know, even if he
maybe.
didn't, I'm not saying he did, but like the possibility is definitely there for that to happen, like off camera. Let
Well, I
alone
think you
the
can
other
create
stuff.
almost any narrative you want from almost any set of cards you draw.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Like I think they're so vague, and you know, fuck. Is he? Maybe he's doing it on purpose, or he's like setting up the deck. But I don't think he'd even need to.
No.
I think that would be less of the scam than him just not believing in it.
Yeah.
Like if you actually didn't believe in it and you're doing a reading for Maddie McCann, that's pretty fucked. You know what I mean?
Well, what
I don't
about
know.
the other side though? Like I do believe that like a lot of these mediums and psychics do genuinely believe that they have this power and that they are gifted.
I just want to jump in before we're answering that, because Aphrodite charges $80 for a 9-card psychic tarot reading. So
Fuck
it's
me,
not
really?
it's not like cheap, you know, like, you know, Brighton Pier going into the, like, you know, the little
Does that
gypsy
matter?
style
The
coach.
price?
But no, I'm just saying it's not a cheap, you know, it's not cheap entertainment, if you want to call it that. But then it's also like, that's a considerable amount of time for a, you know, essentially an audio file from someone who's claiming he can tell your future. That's what doesn't sit right.
Yeah.
It does walk along a weird line in that, I mean, we've spoken a lot so far about the more sensational side of this, which was, you know, Most Haunted and Derek Okura getting possessed. But then there is, on the flip side, you know, tarot card readings, which, like Kalen said earlier, is very much just someone creating a narrative out of, you know, the things that they've been given, basically. And I think if the person is getting some kind of comfort from that, in a sense, is it really that bad, like, what they're spending? Or, like, is it
Yeah.
even bad that they're doing it in the first place? I think there's a point where it does get kind of horrible. But I think on a very, like, basic level of just someone's looking for some kind of guidance, they got led here through whatever means, and this person is just through a kind of creative way, in a sense, just
Yeah.
doing that.
That's what I was going to sort of reply to George's question, that a lot of, I think there are a number of psychics and mediums who are, you know, kind of like charlatans, you know, but I'd be wary of calling all of them that. But I think a lot are just people who want to try and be more like life coaches, or
Yeah.
genuinely give people advice that could help them.
Yeah.
But that's an
more-
interesting dynamic in itself,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
although in every case that I've ever seen, it's always extremely positive, really reassuring. You know, it's like, oh, your mother's smiling down on you. She said that, you know, she misses you and she loves you, and you're a great daughter to have. But it's still completely up to the medium or psychic to be the one who makes that positive.
Yeah.
Whereas they could like potentially like they have the power to say the complete opposite and give that person like a really horrible time if they so want to.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting to see the dynamic of the power is just completely in this other person's arms.
That's very true. I mean, like, we've all kind of seen situations where, say, like, a loved one has died, and then someone else will say, like, oh, you know, they're still here and they're still watching, and things like that. And obviously that's just, like, comforting and it's harmless and whatnot. But then mediums, in some instances, are kind of using that as, like, a career. And like you say, can potentially twist it in ways which can be, like, taking advantage of the person.
There was one psychic who... It was a famous case in New York, I believe. I can't remember it exactly, but they defrauded like clients out of like nearly $1 million. I think it was like 800,000, and that's a lot of money and like serious fraud. And it's kind of like, I guess the idea of like, especially from a legal sense of view, is what constitutes as a scam if someone is believing that you're communicating with the dead. This isn't a fake business venture or an investment gone wrong. This is, you're paying me money to converse with a loved one in a very vulnerable position. Like,
is that what these like super high amounts were for? They were like private situations where they're asking about like loved ones, or was it like they were wondering what the S&P 500 is going to be like in 10 years?
It was like, would you you're going to need this like this trinket or this item that costs a lot of money in order to commune, or sorry, I've still got a tickly cough, like in order to for the clairvoyancy to work and become stronger. And it's just like lots of these these sort of
like
we need no, it's in like we need a diamond ring in order to complete the seance, like
and
that
you must
kind of
give
thing.
it to
Oh my god.
Yeah.
These absolute fools falling for this.
Yeah, but it starts, doesn't it? Where I guess it's like any con where you go in, you spend like pocket change for a reading, and then once you're there, that's the hooks are in, and then
you're like, oh, I need to find more now. I want to speak to them again, or
especially
something.
Someone who's in a vulnerable state if a close relative or a loved one has died.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very easy to say like, has silly people like how they're doing that, but some people in a scenario like that get so desperate that in some context they're almost willing to take anything.
It's true, and that is, I guess, the argument that we've been working towards is that I think a lot of these people are just straight up like horrible scammers. People come to these reading things wanting to speak to their dead husband or something like that, and these people just look at them and see like a fucking walking wallet. I think something we should work out is, do we think the online people are any better, or is it the same shit?
Yeah, that's what I find. Oh, sorry, you go on, George.
I think the fact that it's online and the fact that it's like instant access is crazy with that sort of stuff. Because before, I'd imagine the only thing you could like instantly check would be like your horoscope or something. If you wanted like a psychic reading and you're like extremely vulnerable and it was 2 a.m. and you like really missed your mum, you couldn't just drop like £200 on like the best psychic to try and, or best medium to like talk to them. But with the internet, you can do that. You can go on someone's Patreon or something and pay like hundreds of dollars to do stuff like that, like at any moment.
Yeah, that's what I was going to sort of say as well, in that way that I think like a lot of things you could be like, oh, this is just a little bit of fun. Like, Don, you did it for a laugh, or a friend, did it for you. And it can just be a little fun, and, you spend like £5-10, however much you want to spend for a little funny psychic reading. But then also, if you are in that vulnerable spot, that cheap little £5 to just see could then very easily spiral. Like, I don't know, I'm not saying it is like gambling, but I imagine it is a similar kind of thing to gambling, where you start off small, maybe for a bit of fun, and then before you know it, you could be in for quite a lot.
I guess so, yeah. Because no one down Great Yarmouth Pier, like getting a £5 tarot reading or whatever, is expecting to find out any source of like grand information. But I mean, they could be in a position where they go down that rabbit hole and they want to find out more. But to go back to the online stuff, it seems that within these interactions that doing like a palm reading or tarot thing, or even like, you know, some kind of like Ouija board or something, they're very, very I think it's very important to kind of have a one-to-one in-person connection with whoever you're doing it with, which seems completely lost online. Like, how do you conduct like a Ouija board or something online?
Yeah.
Like, surely that kind of thing is just like
That doesn't
impossible.
make
Hand
any
on the
sense,
screen.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the spirits know they're bounced on.
What? But into the computer?
Maybe they, you know, why not?
Is your Dell
I mean, is
haunted?
it any different than talking to the
Probably,
dead?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it is. I agree with Don again. Like, it's so weird that something so personal is not just done over like the internet, but also viewed by people over the internet. You know, when
Yeah.
if you have a tarot reading, it's like I've not had one, but it's used. I've seen there's one at Brighton Pier where it's like an old gypsy style like carriage. And I imagine you go in and there's probably only space for one person, maybe two, and the person doing your tarot. It seems like an intimate thing that's supposed to be that, let alone, you know, you're on Aphrodite's stream and I don't know how many people are watching, also just, you know, seeing
Yeah.
your future.
Like, imagine that on Twitch, right? With like all the gremlins you find in the chat room. Like, someone's
Yeah.
doing a thing where it's like, oh, I think I sent someone's cousin, and then you have like 50 people in Twitch chat say, my cousin,
Yeah.
my cousin
Yeah,
died
yeah,
recently.
yeah.
It's
You
like,
have, like,
how do you
the-
conduct that?
The
Like,
death
it must
card
be
gets-
impossible.
Death card gets
And
drawn
then
in the tarot and
yeah,
it's like PogChamp.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and everyone's like, that is right, my cousin loved purple.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, poggers.
It's like, I guess
Focus in
they
the
all
chat.
love you, I guess. And then
Yeah.
what? Do you just leave it?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess on Twitch, I haven't actually seen a live stream with the chat. I would like to see that.
I want to see mediums doing people who have died, but by their like usernames.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to
That's
see like
another
Knight
thing I
Rider
realised.
420
Doom
covered.
Yeah.
Doom Master 89. I have a strong feeling that you maybe aren't doing too well at school.
Yeah, that's another
Yeah.
thing about this whole thing taking place online, actually, because unlike a lot of other kind of communities that we've looked into and will look into in the future, there's a heck of a lot that they just use their names. Like, there's no what's the word?
Anonymity.
That's it. Yeah,
Anonymity, yeah.
there's barely any of that. It's just like, you're not gonna get a reading by Boktar277. You know, you're gonna get it from Sandra Higgins from Stoke-on-Trent.
Oh yeah,
Like,
we haven't really
it's-
talked about that side of it. There's
There's a lot of it's on
yeah.
Facebook. There's a heck of a lot of groups on Facebook of just, you know, people being very public about like
Yeah. Or
experiences that
forums
they've
you
had
go.
or giving people readings. It's not as like hidden away in corners of the internet like a lot of other communities that we've been looking at are.
Yeah, they do
Yeah.
very much put themselves out there. The kind of like when you look for a psychic to talk to, and it's you just get like a few sites that we've checked out where you just get like a little video, a little picture, and a name, and like a few LinkedIn style, ticks
Yeah,
and
like a
skills
description
Yeah.
of the things that they do. But like, it's very open. It's not like hidden, you know.
I also
I think a lot of
yeah.
that is to do with the fact that a lot of these people are older, and the community around it is probably quite supportive. I can't imagine there's much trolling or
Yeah.
like negative stuff that goes on.
I will also
There's not
say
a
that
lot of-
we're sort of like four guys sort of in our 20s and 30s chatting about this, and it does seem to be more of like a disproportionately like female, I guess. Like, what's that? How I'm trying to say this better. Let me
Well,
try again.
I don't think it's
But, like,
just
you know what I mean?
female. I
It
think
seems
it's like-
go on. What are you saying?
Yeah, I don't think it's just female. I think it's like, I mean, do you know anyone our age who believes like in ghosts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I don't know about like the psychic aspect specifically, but tarot cards I think are really popular with people around our age.
Sure. Okay.
I will say with the traditional mediums, I think it's a lot of men being the mediums and a lot of women buying their services. So you got that's just my kind of like
Yeah, no, I was just going
anecdotal
off the
experience.
I kind of butchered my words earlier, but that thing where you check for like a medium to talk to sort of online or something like that. It was a lot of women who looked like they may have been in their like late 30s and 40s or older, And,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know if it was something worth exploring, whether it was sort of the demographic of it, because
Yeah.
I don't know
That's
how
kinda
popular
like-
like that stuff is with like people younger than us. you
Yeah,
know,
like we were
people in their
looking on
teens.
mediumchat.co.uk, I think is one website we were looking into, and like no one there is like under 30. Like there's no like 20-year-olds doing it.
But I do think that it's just where you look, because on YouTube, for example, there's loads of like lifestyle YouTubers who are like young, like 25-year-old women, who are, you know, doing tarot card reading and stuff. Kind of like how we saw with the Wiccans, that there was loads of young people interested in it.
True.
Like, and of course, there is like a lot of overlap with that. And that's like the really interesting thing, because with the online aspect of it, there is all these young people that have been that are now seeing it, that haven't really seen this sort of stuff before, or always just seen it as like something kind of weird that, like, you know, like you wouldn't see it like in your high street, just like a tarot card reading thing. Normally only in like cities or like holiday destinations stuff like this would happen, but now anytime, any place, you can just, you know, take a peek.
Yeah.
They're always in like holiday sort of, you know, environments or entertainment environments. You know, there's very few
Yeah.
like serious sort of psychics and tarot cards that you come across, tarot readers, sorry, that you come across in your day-to-day life. But online, yeah, you can definitely find them a lot easier.
Kind of interesting people's attitude to it as well, isn't it? People are like, yeah, you know, I think there might be something to it. I'm not sure. I had a weird experience with it and stuff like that. And it's like, wait, you're saying you think there might be something to humans talking to the dead? Like, if you believe that, isn't that just like a fucking world-ending, like, epiphany? Like, if you actually believe that we can talk to the dead, but it's always like, yeah, it's kind of entertaining. I think it might be true. It's like, what?
Caleb, with everything going on in the world today, you must realize that something that, you know, does that really that surprising that people think that, oh man, that must mean there is an afterlife, and that, you know, my loved ones
just
aren't
move
really
on.
gone. But, you know,
Yeah,
Derek Akora
it's no
most
big
wanted
deal.
is it's pretty charming, you know.
Yeah. So, George, you mentioned before there was some kind of drama on Twitch between our boy Destiny and a psychic. Do you want to tell us about that?
Just before you say
It's just-
Destiny is not my boy.
Yeah, nor my boy.
He's not my boy anymore.
It's
actually.
how I heard-
Destiny, if you're listening,
He was
fuck
never
you.
my boy.
It's how I heard about the Aphrodite psychic guy in the first place, but it was basically just during a podcast, Destiny was telling him that what he was doing was like extremely unethical and preys on, you know, people who's not in the right mindset and stuff, and just like everything you'd expect. And Aphrodite was defending, saying that like it's real, and you're just like not believing and stuff. So yeah,
That's
I mean,
always
it's
the
pretty much
argument.
what you'd expect, but it's how I found it.
That's always the
But
argument,
something-
isn't it? You have to believe in it for it to work properly, and that's just so flawed.
You can't go into it with a negative
There is a-
mindset.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it'd just be like not worth it to try and like poke holes in
Yeah,
this sort of stuff.
there's no point in us actually going on to one of these like medium chat things and actually having a conversation with someone, because it's like, I don't know, we're not the people who are, you know, kind of in this position where we're trying to like find something and we're not going to take it seriously, or, you know, things like that. So there's almost no point in us like indulging, like in attempting it.
So
And I can imagine that's what a lot of people would feel when being like critical about it.
do you think there is anything? This is to all of you guys, but do you think there is anything that could make you believe? Like, I know I don't know
In
if you have it,
ghosts?
but yeah, I've had family members who said like they have never believed in that sort of thing, but then experienced something that made them, you know, question that.
I
don't
mean,
know
if I
you think-
saw one, sure.
yeah, yeah,
guess.
yeah, that's
Even
the
if I
thing.
saw one,
then,
I wouldn't believe
yeah.
it.
You'd think
Yeah.
it was. I
would
think it's some sort of
I would
psychological
accept
trick.
almost any explanation before that, like I'd been drugged or I was having a mental breakdown.
Yeah, yeah, or hallucination or something. Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I just wanted to see your views.
I can
on it.
remember my grandmother telling me a bunch of stories about her seeing ghosts, and I mean, yeah, they didn't really wash off on me or anything.
What did they say?
I remember one specifically about her, and when this is one of those stories where it's like, did this really happen? Like, it sounds kind of like mad, but she told me one story specifically about how she saw her mum kind of like up in the corner of a room, and she started like shouting and screaming at her, like my nan did, started shouting and screaming at the ghost or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, this sounds like such a crazy story.
It sounds like she was just like had lost the plot one
So
night.
I've got a really good one. So my cousin, her and her family moved house because they thought their house was haunted. They bought a new house, and they said that all of the family felt it, like her husband, 2 daughters, and that the 2 daughters, when they were young, would like ask questions about the old lady on the stairs, and that was, enough to spook them out of their house.
Mm.
That's crazy. Like, I don't believe that for a second, but that's crazy.
Something that I find interesting is when it's like a haunting or something like that, it's always like one or two. Shouldn't there be like hundreds of millions of ghosts, like completely
Everywhere.
filled up every inch? Yeah.
Nah, because you have to, like, it's all the ones that don't let go. All the ones with
Yeah, it's
unfinished
the ones
business,
that haven't moved on.
all
that
the
kind of
bad
thing, right?
souls, it's the ones that are, tied down to the material plane.
Yeah, there'll always be a convenient explanation why they're absolute nonsense.
What are you talking about, Ken? And that makes complete sense. Just as much sense as, the Earth being flat. Or no,
Dude, I've always
you're-
said the shit is Warhammer lore. It's just like it's
Yeah, that's a good. If it sounds like Warhammer lore, probably.
Yeah.
it is.
It's up there with the lizard man and the mummies.
It
like-
is. It's just like it makes sense within its own like world, but it doesn't actually. It's not real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, does anyone have any kind of closing thoughts on our boys, the mediums and the psychics?
I kind of
I
like.
think-
Oh, sorry. Go on, George.
I was just gonna like reiterate the fact that I think it's interesting that there's all these differences and the way that the internet has kind of shaped the community, and kind of modernized it in a certain way. Yeah.
I will say I went on the subreddit for psychics and it was pretty. It's just a bit memey, but it was quite wholesome. There's like people like I've lost my cat, and everyone like use their like psychic energy to help find it or like direct it home and shit like that.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting.
It's almost everything I've seen is really wholesome, even when it is somebody like exploiting somebody else by taking their money. The person who's paying the money still gets a lot out of it. They get a lot of closure.
Yeah. I guess it depends on, from an outside perspective, if you're breaking down like what it is that they're paying for. Like, is it just empty words that they're paying for, or is it just like some form of comfort? I guess that's where like it's open to criticism in a sense.
yeah, I think
David, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that as far as the idea of like ghost hunting or anything like that, it's all cool by me. I love it. It's a bit of entertainment, and I don't mind that like TV shows get commissioned or people become famous because of it, because it's like it's like the WWE for me. It's fun, and I think it's ultimately quite harmless. But when it comes to like actual psychics and mediums taking money from people, like I think I genuinely think it's a con and it shouldn't be allowed. Like, I don't mind a tarot reading here and there as like a fun thing, in the same way that horoscopes aren't particularly dangerous. They don't offend me being in the news, but I don't think they're real, and like people are free to believe what they want. But when people are claiming to actually be communicating to like loved ones like that have passed on, or to to see the future, and that they need to do things to achieve like certain futures, I think that's just not cool.
Yeah, not cool.
Do you
Not cool
think
out of
there's a new age of, I guess, ghost hunters and mediums that will come about soon?
Oh yeah,
Like,
definitely.
that started and, will carry on through the internet. There
For
was
sure.
no Most Haunted and
For sure,
and things
because
like
like Ghost Hunters with Zach Baggins is been quite popular recently, and a lot of horror films like the Amityville Horror and things like that are starting to look at more real life places, and I think it's starting to like, it's kind of like we spoke in the Wiccans thing, where things like the paranormal kind of drift in and out of popular culture. Like in the 90s when the X-Files was on, the idea of UFOs and all that was like super in the popular culture, and I think that I think ghost hunting might be one of those things that could creep back in with a few if a few YouTubers really latch onto it in a fun way, in a way that maybe doesn't take itself too seriously, and might be able to deliver some like interesting history, because that was Most Haunted. It wasn't just his Derek Okora making a tit out of himself. Here's some
very true.
history about this, this abandoned farm that had this like horrific backstory, and it's kind of like, yeah, fine,
I think there's a lot to talk about with Ghost Hunters specifically. Maybe we could do like another podcast on it in the future.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but yeah.
Well, that's it for Under the Heat Lamp podcast this week. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'll give you a little bit of
Where's the
echo on my outro. It's coming. So have a spooky week, and I hope you're all staying safe. And shout out to the dude from Michigan. I have noticed you're not listening anymore. Why is that?
Yeah, actually,
Bye.
please. No, we
Goodbye.
need to do social media.
Oh, yeah,
Everyone
yeah.
always
Oh, yes.
forgets about the fucking
Don, do the social media.
All right, hit us up at Heatlamp Podcast on Twitter and at Heatlamp Podcast
Hit lamp.
at gmail.
Don't hit the lamp.
Don't hit the lamp, please. You're awful.
Keep those lizards living.
Yeah,
You can
please.
get
I
it
mean,
undertheheatlamp.com as well. It's got all the stuff.
yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
They
it does.
will do.
Yeah. Is it undertheheatlamp.com?
Yeah.
Is it up and
Delicious.
running?
Cool.
I mean, it just links to the Anchor at the moment, but I'll set it up.
Oh, sick. Cool.
And also,
All right, well,
in reference to my bad,
sorry, I'm ending it. I'm just kidding. Carry on.
in reference to my bad fucked up joke at the beginning, where I was trying to say, is anybody there? I actually mean it also to the viewers. Please email us and let us know that you're there, because it would be really entertaining.
Anybody?
Actually, I'm getting a vision now. I
Ooh.
see a viewer, just not emailing the podcast right now. I
Wow,
see
dude,
it.
that's going to be horribly accurate, because so far nobody's emailed us and it's getting kind of rude.
So
So
if you're
just
listening
fucking
and
do
you're
it.
some random dude or girl,
Hmm.
just hit us up.
Just do it. What the fuck, please. All right,
Send
that's
us
it.
up.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
So,
Bye.